And I'd love for you to break down what the word witch actually means.
Yeah. So the word witch, Wicca, wicked, wisdom, wizard, they all come from the same origin, which is wise. It meant wisdom. It was spelled W or pronounced vice, but Wicce, vice, which in the old Germanic languages, which really influenced English, and those of us who speak English, that's where most of our words come from. And so it was about being a person who had wisdom of the plants, wisdom of energy, wisdom to divine information from the universe or God or the divine, and was able to then heal people or understand what we needed to do with our crops, talk to the plants, talk to the land, really be able to lead and guide us towards our highest self.
Welcome, Mia, to the Highest Self podcast. It's so great to have you back.
Thank you, Queen. So good to be here. I wish we were in person again, but it's all good.
I know with your beautiful witchy background, it just looks so like luxurious Salem vibes. I'm really into it.
Luxurious Salem vibes is really what
5-star Salem.
Yeah, this chair is actually from 1926. So yeah, we're working with the vintage witch frequency.
Into it. And my first question for you is, what makes you your highest self?
What makes me my highest self is believing in magic, is having faith and trust. I just shared that the origin of the word confidence is actually trust. And so it means trusting in myself, trusting in the universe, trusting in my capacity to divine wisdom and information from the elements, from the world around me, from the way that my life reflects itself back to me. And ultimately being able to inspire others to believe in magic and just awaken to their own innate power and release the middleman between us and the divine. That's really what makes me my highest self.
I love that. And something that I love that you do is you really do break down words, and like that's so true. Confidence, like confidence, and
Yeah.
with the confidence. And I'd love for you to break down what the word witch actually means.
Yeah. So the word witch, Wicca, wicked, wisdom, wizard, they all come from the same origin, which is wise. It meant wisdom. It was spelled W or pronounced vice, but Wicce, vice, which in the old Germanic languages, which really influenced English, and those of us who speak English, that's where most of our words come from. And so it was about being a person who had wisdom of the plants, wisdom of energy, wisdom to divine information from the universe or God or the divine, and was able to then heal people or understand what we needed to do with our crops, talk to the plants, talk to the land, really be able to lead and guide us towards our highest selves. And before the personal development movement, that was like the highest iteration of our tribe. It was about being our highest selves as a community and as a group, as a collective. And so before pharmacies, right, we didn't have any drugs, we didn't have anything that was synthesized. We only had that which came from the earth. We only had plants to heal ourselves and to remedy any ailments that we had. And so that's really a big part of wisdom and being a witch, is really just reclaiming this knowledge that we all have access to, but that most of us have been told that we need like a preacher or someone in between us and God, or us and the divine, us and Mother Earth, to interpret. Like, we are not ever going to be able to understand what it is, but that's the true nature of wisdom, is your own interpretation, your own receivership of that divine wisdom and information.
I love that so much. So witch, you would say, is essentially a wise woman.
Yeah, a wise woman, a wise man, a wise person. It's just about wisdom, right? We look at Sa, and he's very much Buddhist. You've got all this amazing Ayurvedic wisdom. Then mine comes from more Celtic, earth-based spirituality. It's like we all have these different relationships to wisdom, but it's about how you embody it and how you bring it forth in your life, not necessarily even having to share it with a wider audience, but just how you share it with everyone in your own immediate reality.
I love that so much. And it's so funny that you mentioned about the origin of the word like we, because I remember I had this dream like 2 years ago, and I woke up from this dream and it was like vired. You're here to be vired. And I like looked up, I'm like, vired, like what does that mean? And it was weird. Like my dream was telling me the original German word, you're here to be weird. And I was
Yeah.
like, that makes total sense. And then I also found that the original word for weird meant destiny.
Yeah.
So it's like to be weird is your destiny. It's
Yeah.
to be unique.
And word and weird, that weird, the way you were pronouncing it is because it was spelled WYRD, and word, our word, and weird come from the same origin, which is destiny, because we're speaking our destinies with our words. How we speak really determines our destiny. And then we were the weird ones if we were moving in the direction of our fate or destiny rather than along with the herd, with the crowd, just doing the same thing as everybody else.
So good. And so much of right now really is about speaking your truth. Speaking your truth in relationships, friendships,
Yeah.
business, social media. And I feel so many of us have this throat chakra block, which I believe is stemming from past lives, ancestral memories of the times that we were burnt at the stake. And sometimes, even I struggle with this too. And I'm someone who does share a lot of myself on social media, but I have this like, when I get down to the core of what the fear is, I have this fear of saying the wrong thing and a group of people coming against me who all dislike me for whatever reason and basically tearing me down, which threatens my safety, which is exactly what happened to the millions of women in these witch hunts in Europe and in the US. So can you share a little bit more about the origins of where this fear of speaking our truth comes from?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. So many people feel it as being strangled or choked, feeling a rope around them, like you said, a throat chakra block. It really is. There's so many different facets. One is that look at every indigenous tribe throughout time. Colonizers came in and wiped them out. They were living in their truths. They were living connected to the land, utilizing their own magic, whatever it was, right? The Dogon tribe, some of the most ancient magic from Gabon in Africa. You look at Native American tribes, you look at South American, Mayan, Aztec, Incan cultures. It's happened literally all over the world. And so one of the big things that was occurring that leads to this throat chakra blockage is, look at what we just said, the wise woman, the person who was the healer. So that's like our doctor. Look at how we idolize doctors in this modern society. Imagine if all of a sudden there was just some big crazy group of people that was like, all the doctors are evil, like let's kill them. Everyone would be like, what? We can't kill the doctors, we need them, and the brainwashing and the propaganda, which also came through words. Some of the largest numbers of witch burnings occurred right after the printing press was invented. And the first book that was put on the printing press was, guess what? The Bible. And so during that time, the Bible changed a lot. Many of the words in the Bible were mistranslated or literally shifted from like manipulation into witchcraft. So it made all of these things about women healers or anyone who could be connected to the divine without a middleman evil, dangerous, not safe to be around, not safe for your children. They're going to eat your children or whatever, all these crazy things. And so, of course, that means that then the person who has been healing, maybe birthed all of your children and has been healing them since they were born, all of a sudden she's not safe to be like, hey, I'm a midwife. I'll take care of your kids. Like, I'll give you this opportunity to, be held through your birthing process. And that happens systematically throughout definitely all of Europe and with any and every major indigenous culture throughout time. And so, of course, it makes us afraid. I like read J.K. Rowling wrote this other like little story where Albus Dumbledore gives this whole speech about why the wizarding world went into hiding. And even though it's fiction, it doesn't feel like that to me. It's like, of course, the wizarding world went into hiding because it was literally dangerous. It was life-threatening to be magical, to be in your power. And so that happens for all of us that are doing this work. There's a moment, I mean, every client that I've had, even just this week, everyone in my programs is like, I want to share my gifts. I want to build my business. I want to let people know about this healing modality that I've discovered, or this incredible practice that I do that has changed my life, but I'm terrified. And it's just kind of an inevitability at this point that we all get to work through. And that's like some of the biggest, yeah, I think that's one of the biggest missions that we're all on right now. And then, you were killed for such minutia. So it's not just like how you are up and out and you're on the podcast and you're doing it. Like, it's not just in the big sense of things. It could be that your village turned against you. These people came in and said that you were bad, and people that you grew up with, people that, took care of your kids, or that you traded eggs and bread with, or whatever the case may be, all of a sudden turned against you and you weren't safe. And it could have been that you had too much water in your well. It could have been that you were too wealthy. Oh, my crops got taken out by weevils, but your crops survived. You must be a witch. Like, you're dangerous, And so there are just so many things that happened. And because people were programmed, and because propaganda was being utilized to make people afraid and to make them subservient, right? To keep them from their destinies, to keep them from being weird. The wound that lives within all of us is really impactful and has lasted for hundreds, if not thousands of years at this point. So it's totally normal for everyone who's feeling it. Like, you and I both feel it all the time. It's like not easy to be walking around wearing this pointy hat, but I know that it's part of my mission to do so. I know that I am meant to be a vessel for the reclamation of this word, because I do believe in my soul that its essence is goodness, and it's just been turned into evil. And I know that I'm here to do good. And so if me putting on a hat helps to heal all of the wounds and all of the fear for stepping forward and speaking our truth, like, I'm going to do it. And I'm going to be terrified every step of the way, but I'm still going to do it.
I love that so much. And I was just in Salem, and I was telling you about a month ago.
Yeah.
And I went on a tour of seeing the different places where the Salem witch trial happened, and just learning a lot more about the history. And they were sharing how basically in Europe, it had been going on for like a good 500 years. They estimate up to over 9 million women were killed in Europe in this 500-year time span for being a quote unquote witch. And then when the Puritans came to the US to settle in Plymouth, basically the Puritans didn't get along with the original people of the Mayflowers. They made a settlement in Salem, which was like half an hour outside. The main mayor had to go fight a battle against the Native Americans, because that's what they were doing at the time. So he put his lieutenant in position of taking care of Salem. The lieutenant had a vested interest in the church and getting people to side with the church, because people were kind of losing their connection with the church. So basically, they started a campaign to call whoever they did not like in the village a witch. So one of the first people was this woman who had been remarried twice. They didn't like that. She was the first, I think her name is Sarah Bishop.
Yeah.
First person killed. The next one was a woman who had some sort of disability, some sort of learning disability. They didn't like her. Next one was a homeless person. So these weren't even people who necessarily were even identifying as a witch, doing magic, any of that stuff. These were just women who were independent, who were different, who they couldn't control, who they simply didn't like. And how easy was it to throw a label on them, which you can't fight yourself back from. The moment someone labels you as a witch, you have to go through this trial process, which you will die simply in the trial process. Most people never even made it through.
Yeah.
Just the amount of torture methods they would do, like torturing you until you declared yourself as a witch, which, like putting literal 1,000-pound stones on people that could crush them, or throwing them into the water, etc. And it even got to a place that husbands were accusing their own wives of being a witch, because they thought, well, then I'll be safe. So it created this basically like the original cancel culture of let me throw the blame at someone else because that will create my safety. And I see that happening again today, like with this mob on social media, this fictitious mob of people that we want to be on the do the right thing on the right side. So let's say I call you, I'm like, Mia's a witch or she's whatever the label is today that they want to call. Right. Exactly. But now we'll have our own ways of saying it. We don't like Mia because she believes this, she doesn't believe this, etc.
Yeah.
All it takes is my accusation and you will never be able to bounce back from it. And in fact, the more you try to explain yourself, the more that they use it for ammo. And it's sad because even today, it's a lot of women doing it to other women. And I know you have a lot to share about the origins of this sister wound, if you can share some of that.
Yeah, well, what you were saying about the torture methods, that was really common. You know, you would be burned all down your legs or on your genitals and then be thrust onto an iron chair. And they would say, oh, if she screams when she hits the chair, she's a witch, right? But she's just had 3rd-degree burns on her legs and like you covered them with her skirts. So one of the methods that torture was utilized for was for you to out another witch. So it didn't matter if that, like, look at, like, dear friends, if it was like, I'm being crushed by 1,000-pound stone and I know the name of the girl who lives down the street, even if you could like mitigate naming all of your best friends, you would still, just knowing another woman's name was dangerous. It was dangerous to you. It was dangerous to her. You couldn't go out and gather like herbs and berries in the forest together, you know, to make tea or to feed yourself or to season your stew or whatever the case may be. So that's where the origin of the sister wound comes from. That's where this tearing other women down comes from with us. Because, you know, when you look back, if you read books like Sex at Dawn or another book called Sex, Time, and Power, women operated in a tribe together. We were supporting each other. It was like, let's all weave the baskets. Let's all gather the eggs and the berries and the nuts and the seeds. Let's all take care of each other's babies together. And so when these witch burnings were happening, it was, you know, it's very similar to the cancel culture in that, like, I feel very grateful that they haven't fucked with me yet. Bless them. I'm like, thanks guys. Like, watch out if you do, because I'm a witch. No, just kidding. But, you know, it's people who are afraid. It's the same as what was happening with the church. They're afraid that they are not able to ever do enough, or that they won't reach their mission. They won't, you know, find their purpose. So let's cancel everyone else who has. It's the same as with the church. It's like they had this story that they were the ones who knew God and they were the ones who were going to, you know, eradicate all the witches because like, this is God's true will. Yeah, but if you're speaking about someone who says, love your neighbor and be charitable, and you're proclaiming that you're his vessels and his servants, how on earth could you be the one that we should, or that like, could witches be the ones that we should be worried about? Like, you're the ones we should be worried about. And it's the same with the cancel culture. It's like, oh, you want us to cancel these people who are just like doing their best to serve, doing their best to share. Like, I'm sure some of the people who have gotten canceled, like maybe they're charlatans or they're not in integrity, but I know that a lot of people are, and a lot of people are just like living their wisdom. They're just honoring their wisdom and what comes through them. And so it's just about fear. You know, we're all so terrified, and I think it makes sense. You know, we're talking about us being afraid because of the way that this lives within our lines, and you know, like, you've got crazy stuff from your family line and all of your grandmothers and the arranged marriages and like so much shit to work through. I was just realizing this massive upper limit glass ceiling thing that I have, that I inherited from my dad, that I have to work through. We're all doing that all the time. And it's hard. It is not easy. It's incredibly challenging. It takes all of your effort and your devotion and your commitment. And so I think the people that are, you know, running the cancel culture are just too afraid to do that. And I get it. I have compassion for that fear 100%, but I'm still going to be committed to pushing past it and moving through it every day. And so, when we think about women doing it to each other, it's like they're just still listening to those old stories. One of the practices that I really engage in with myself is like, yes, I'm the witch, but I am the witch hunter. I am the perpetrator. That lives inside of me too. So how can I every day be more in devotion to the witch than the witch hunter? And it's like that proverb with which wolf do you feed? It's the same. It's like, this is the wolf that I want to feed, is me being the witch. Do I hear the voices and the criticism and the hate and the fear of the witch hunter? Yeah. And I just have to make a conscious, committed effort every day not to listen to that and let that inform my choices in my life.
I love that so much, that even that witch hunter energy lives inside of us, and how the ways that we also may be judging or shaming or perpetrating that on other people. And I think, survival and safety is really at the core of human needs. And if we feel like me going with the mainstream opinion and narrative, et cetera, is going to lead to my safety, well, then fuck the girl down my street, or whoever it is today. And I feel like we also, and we have seen this happen with different like social media movements where like, I'm a good person. Like I'm a good person. We like put up whatever they tell us to do. I'm a good person. And then because people aren't living their purpose, they get this sense of like morality and righteousness of like, I'm doing something for humanity. By what? By tearing down the people who didn't react or respond as quickly or in the way that they wanted to. And I think that it's so important for us to recognize that in ourselves and, have compassion that we've all been indoctrinated by the system that still exists right now. And we're all, every time we watch the media, we're, like we were talking about watching Hocus Pocus, and, we were both like, yeah, I loved Hocus Pocus. Then we were like, wait, Hocus Pocus was actually like kind of whack, like their depiction of witches. But it's like, still in the media today, it's like the girls fighting over the guy, and like who's going to get to the top, and who's the most beautiful, and like which celebrities like fucking whose boyfriend, and who's making the most money, and who got on and it's like, how are we still part of this narrative? And I think we can't even have this conversation without the patriarchy that's playing a huge role in this. Like I was telling you how I've been going through even deeper womb initiations, and I realized Drake, who's such a well-known, probably most famous rapper, his new album is called Certified Lover Boy. And it's a picture of a bunch of pregnant emoticons, like pregnant, like Asian, Black, white, Hispanic, all these different pregnant emoticons. And the album is like, I'm a certified lover boy, and showing like I impregnate all these different women. I haven't read one article or seen any form of backlash against that, because it's so normalized. We're like, oh, cool, Drake, he's impregnating and leaving women. Like, awesome. Like it doesn't even create a discord in our minds because we're so accustomed to it. And that's what also perpetrates that sister wound, that if we're like, men are going to impregnate and leave me, that means every woman is my competition to try to get him to stay, to love me, to ensure my safety. So how do you see our role of healing the patriarchy in the ways that this wound is even still in minor and subconscious ways within us?
Oh, girl, I mean, we could spend the whole podcast on that. We could spend hours on that. I think that it's different for everyone. It really just depends on what I like to do. How I like to think of it is that we all have masculine and feminine. We all have that middle way, that sort of non-binary androgyny within us. We all have an internal mother and father and sort of daughter and son. You can think of it as like this quadrant. And what has worked for me is just, how can I heal that within myself? How do I see my father, my actual father, whether he's in your life or not? How do I see him being disempowered or doing what I actually want him to do? Like, what ways does he show me? And I'm like, yeah, this is good. I want to emulate that. And what ways am I like, no, that is something I need to leave behind? And then how do I witness that within myself? What is my inner father like? Am I really disciplined? Maybe to the point of where if I take a rest, I shame myself and I get angry at myself and I don't, just let myself have a break and take a bath. Or was my father absent? And so I have no discipline and I, never create any structure in my life. And I haven't been able to build a business or a solid, safe foundation for myself. Okay, well then that's patriarchal wounding inside of me. How do I work on that? Same goes with the mother. Do I nourish myself? Do I take care of myself and nurture myself? How do I feed myself? Do I tend to my body well? Then, when you go into like the child archetype, it's like, how am I creating? How am I setting forth in the world? How am I standing up and showing myself and shining my light? And so I always recommend, like that's the work that I do with my clients and that I share with my students is that work starts within you, because we are microcosmic expressions of the macrocosm. At this point, just hating the patriarchy, or like wanting to smash it, I haven't found many women who are successful at doing that on like a grander scale, other than the ones who are doing it like the way that you are, the way that Layla is, the way that I am, the way that Alexi is, the way that Amber is. We're all doing it in our way. We're showing up, we're shining our light, we're building a business, we're creating, masculine structure or discipline in order to build something that's safe, that keeps us safe, that's solid, that's a foundational element that we can actually grow from. And then we bring our creativity to it. We bring our inspiration, we bring our magic, we bring our flow, and we give it, we offer it. And I think that, yeah, there's so much to unwinding these patriarchal systems. And one of the first things that I think is really important is paying attention to how you tend to the earth, because that's the biggest way that we are all as a collective out of alignment. We weren't able to extract things from the planet. We weren't able to, have plastic bags and shit into our fresh water, to be perfectly honest. That's not how we grew as humanity, as a society. And when you're talking about safety, in tribal times, if you were cast out, a lion was going to get you, or you were going to die of frostbite or whatever. You needed your tribe. You needed to be together with people in order to survive. And so it's scary to be weird, to move in a different direction. But I believe that I know you and I share a vision of, doesn't have to be utopian, but of creating heaven on earth. I know that we share that with Blue. I know that we share that with so many sisters. I know that so many men also, like my partner is so attractive to me because he literally, when he like read one of the goddess books, he was like, man, fuck the patriarchy. And I was like, yes, king, and he's like 6'5" Viking. And he's like, I'm a goddess on the inside. I'm like, yes, baby, you are. There are also men who are here to help us unwind it and who are willing to look at their shit too and say, oh, that's patriarchal of me, or, oh, I was shaming you for that, or, oh, I had judgment around that because I've been indoctrinated too. But I think the most important thing is to just work on witnessing where you see the patriarchal beliefs informing your reaction to other people. Like I'm sure, also we can go in the downward spiral of comparison, or we can go on the upward spiral of cheerleading and support and like, yes, queen, you got this, And so I think that the biggest thing is just looking at, how is the patriarchy affecting your immediate reality and your relationship to that reality? What are the belief systems? What are the habits and behaviors that show up? And then start with those. Start with seeing where you're afraid to shine your light, or you're afraid to speak your truth to someone. Because ultimately, we don't want to be in partnerships with people who we can't speak our truth to. We don't want to be friends with people who we can't be ourselves with. Our families, God bless them, they are all there to teach us, but even those relationships, I've seen with some of my clients, even with like really strict religious parents, I have seen massive transformation simply by a person being willing to own what their truth is themselves. Mm-hmm. This is my truth. And then something in the energetic dynamic of their relationship to their family changes. So I think that's how we shift the patriarchy, because I don't know if we can count on the like larger systems. I don't know. I don't trust them too much, but I trust me. I trust the way the goddess expresses to me, and I trust this amazing planet, this mother we all share. So I think that just tuning into those things and healing our disconnection from ourselves and each other and this mother, that's the best place to start.
So good. I love all of that. And I remember reading once, I think it was from David Data, that we attract someone that is the opposite of the feminine and masculine poles that we are. So let's say I'm 60% feminine, 40% masculine. So my husband, Steven, I would say he's like 60% masculine, 40% feminine. He has a bit more of a masculine energy that I do, but he's a musician, like he's connected to his femininity. I have more of a feminine, but I also, am a Capricorn and create businesses.
Yes.
So it works, because if I was like 90% feminine, 10% masculine, I was like, Daddy, save me. And like in that total princess, he wouldn't actually be attracted to me, because I wouldn't be able to meet him there and balance him there. So, someone like a Drake, who is hyper wounded masculine, just assuming from the type of content that he's putting out there, he's going to attract people who are probably hyper, super feminine wounded, and they're going to trauma bond with each other and live out this dynamic of impregnation and abandonment. And that will continue that. Whereas if we all do the inner work and we're like, no, I don't need you, Drake, to pay my bills. I don't need you, man, to support me or to provide my safety or to provide me opportunities or what I want in life. I don't need a sugar daddy. I'm my own sugar daddy. Then those men naturally are either going to have to all be single forever, which I don't think is going to happen, or start to shift. And I think that that's really the difference between like the culture of like the feminist movement. I do consider myself a feminist, because a feminist believes in equal rights for male and female. However, I don't identify with this feminist culture that's been created around it, which is like, to smash the patriarchy, we must essentially become men, which is also perpetuating the patriarchy of, you got to get your way to the top, to the corner office, to, basically become the most ruthless and disconnected from your heart, which we see in like, I don't know, the Hillary Clinton archetype, for example. I don't know her personally, but we see that happening again and again, and it's still reinforcing that same patriarchy. And what I think the beauty of embracing our inner witch is all about is we get to be feminine and feminist. We get to be empowered and soft. We get to be connected to the earth and creating our own reality. And like, that's the beauty of it. And I think that that's why the patriarchy was so afraid of it, because then we become sovereign and we don't need them and we can't be ruled by them. And we're no longer going to be a victim of their narrative. Then we actually break free from the system, which obviously, if the system is based off of control, they don't want.
Yeah, totally. And I think that, the piece about how we relate to each other, it's so important. Every time I've seen a woman or a man or a gender nonconforming person, anyone that I've ever seen who puts up a boundary and says, I'm good on this relationship because of, they might not say that the label is because of patriarchy, but because of the way that the patriarchy is showing up in this relationship, like, you don't let me speak my truth, or you're shaming, or there's abuse, or whatever the case may be. Every person that I know that has left a relationship in order to find something better, truly, the person that they left becomes better for that. They are inspired, they are activated, they're motivated to say, okay, wow, I loved this person, they left me, I want to change. And I don't have a lot of contact with men who engage in domestic violence, so don't let me, overstep and not be compassionate or empathetic to that situation. Maybe those men never change, but the men that I see, the women that I see, even for me with friends, in my early days in LA, I remember this girl was like, Mia, I love you, but you're too sad and I can't hang out with you. I'd like just gone through a breakup. She's like, it's all you talk about. You're too sad. I just can't. And God bless her for saying that to me, because that is what propelled me on my journey. That was what made me like, okay, shit, my old friend is like, I don't want to hang out with you. So I need to fix my sadness, not fix it, but I need to find out what it needs. I need to not let it be, I've been, building the VR in Hogwarts, or building Hogwarts in VR, building Witch School in VR right now. And I've been just looking at how we can utilize all of these elements. And we think about, if fire is our action, well, water quells fire and puts it out. And so our emotions can keep us from taking action. They can overrun that power, that inspiration, that activation, like, whoa, yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get this. But if we're too sad and we're letting the sadness keep flooding our reality, then of course we can't take action because there's no room for the fire. And so, that is such a beautiful opportunity. If anyone's listening to this and they're like, oh man, I don't want to leave my relationship, even though I know I'm settling and like, this isn't what I want. I promise you, if you communicate it properly to that person, if you do it with love and you genuinely are looking out for yourself, they will be inspired. Even if it takes a couple of months or a couple of years, they will be inspired and they will see how they can change their own lives too. And I think that, we were just talking about our other friends today who moved from, being with a woman who wasn't as much in her power to being with a queen and to being with a goddess, and what that does to a man to be like, I am with a goddess now. I'm different. I want to be different to and for the feminine. And so, we are the leaders. We have the portal. We have direct access to the divine in our wombs. We are the leaders. And so it's up to us to be an example and a role model and the embodiment of that which we are seeking. And that's why the feminist movement, just tearing men down is never going to work. That's exactly what the patriarchy did. That's not helpful. We've seen how poorly that all goes. We have to be equal. We have to empower ourselves and each other and be willing to support and heal. Even like in one of my group programs, we've got one dude. It's like in my group coaching, he signed up, like it's a program for women and he just signed up and was there. And I was like, cool. Like, I'm so glad you're here. And all the women still let themselves be safe because they know that he's actually there for the right reasons. And that's what will change everything.
I love that so much. And I think we have just been taught that the loudest person, the most aggressive person, they're the ones who are going to get their message across. So I think, I'm grateful for the feminist movement and what it's done for women in general since the 60s. And it isn't the long-term solution because it's not really fighting for what we care about. It's saying, well, now I'm even louder than you, and now I'm going to put you down, which actually makes the men get more defensive. And it actually just creates an even stronger reaction, which we don't realize that our strength is actually in our softness. It's actually in our ability to be like, do you know how I feel right now, honey? And like just that alone opens a man's heart. But we have just been, I think, hurt and betrayed. And I really want to talk about that deep betrayal wound that is in so many of us. That's like, I opened my heart before and I was betrayed. I trusted a sister before and I was betrayed. It's not safe for me to open my heart again. How can we move past that?
I think that the greatest thing that I would say is there has to be something you learned. You can look at the disempowered thing that you learned, which is people can't be trusted. But what if I worked with a client who was she had been abused by her partner, and she was having a really hard time taking responsibility for it in her own life. She was like, but he did this to me. And I just looked at her and I was like, was there ever a moment in the very beginning before it happened where you saw a red flag and you didn't listen? You didn't follow that guidance. You said, I'm going to stay. And her face just dropped and she was just like, oh my God. And so that's the biggest thing for all of us, this betrayal. It's from ourselves. It's because we were forced to betray ourselves in order to survive. We were forced to betray our truth and our gifts and our magic in order to survive. And so the first practice is to not betray yourself. Listen to those tiny little nudges, those little itsy bitsy teeny weeny subtle whispers where your intuition says, bring a jacket, or like, you want to go left right now. It can be so small. They can be so tiny. It's gotten to the point with me where it's like the smallest little thing. And the example that I always share is like, I was at my partner's house and he had this little green bag sitting right next to his backpack. And I saw the green bag and I thought about saying something and then I didn't. And we went back to my house, and the next day it was my birthday and he's like searching everywhere. I'm like still in bed. I'm like, what's going on? He's like, I lost your birthday present. I'm like, what does it look like? He's like, it's in this little green bag. I can't find it anywhere, and I just didn't say anything, and I would have. The other day I was at Layla's house and I had this thought, like, is someone taking a shower? And I was going to ask her, but it's like, why would I ask her that? And her bathtub was overflowing and it flowed all the way down into her living room and like got all over the rug. And if I had asked, she would have thought, oh my God, there's someone, or there's no one showering, it's the bathtub. And so these little whispers, these small ways that our intuition, our inner wisdom speaks and communicates to us, if we start to not betray that, if we start to listen and say, I hear you, I will let myself be guided. I will say this weird thing about a shower just because like that's what you're telling me to do. I don't know why, but I guess it's just because it's what I'm meant to do. And I will do that. And I will let you lead me. That is how we stop betraying ourselves. And we let our inner wisdom and our inner guidance know, I trust you and you can trust me in return. And then when we are radiating that energy of trust, that's what then brings in people to our lives who we can trust, who won't betray us, who are going to love us. Like I have no fear of that with you. I know you would never betray me ever. It's because I trust myself. So I trust myself to call in people into my life who are amazing and going to be in integrity. And I think that, healing betrayal is hard. It sucks. When people cheat on you, it's hard to forget. When, a parent or someone abandons you, it's really hard to believe that someone else won't do the same thing. But if you can start cultivating, like even in that healing process, what does my body need right now? What does my heart need? What does my soul yearn for to feel right now? How can I meet that need myself? How can I show my soul I'm willing to give that to you? That is what will then shift and transform the whole belief that no one can be trusted or that everyone will betray me. It's like, no, I know I can be trusted and I know I will never again betray myself. And then that vibration rippling out will just change the game and no one will be fooled by someone who's out of alignment with that trust in themselves and who would have the capacity to then betray them.
So powerful and such a great reminder of the inner GPS system that we have of our intuition that truly is always looking out for the best in us. And I think sometimes as women, we are trained to overlook that GPS system. We're like, oh, well, just see the best in everyone, or, oh, it's fine. And I know I've done that with friends before that I'm like, oh, well, they're still fun, yeah. And I'm like ignoring all of the other ways that they don't. I'm like, oh, but no one's perfect. And then until it comes around and it hits me. And yeah. I think that we, it's a beautiful thing to want to see the best in people and follow those intuitive nudges of like, hey, maybe I don't feel totally safe sharing all of this with them. Maybe there is some form of jealousy here. It doesn't make you a negative person if you're genuinely sensing it. Maybe it is your own story and it's your own shit. And you can actually ask and journal and dive it deeper and be like, hey, I'm feeling that there's something weird going on between us, and like have that open communication. But if you're still feeling that, it is an invitation to make a shift. And I truly believe our intuition is always looking out the best in us. I don't know if you've seen this show Manifest. Mm-mm. Have you seen this show? Mm-mm. It's basically like this new show, and a plane crashes, it gets into this like time vortex, and they come back and the people on the plane have this thing called the calling, and it tells them like go into the house, save those two. And they like find that it's like two girls that are like in this room, and they save them, and they keep getting these hits in their mind and it's basically guiding them to save lives. And it's really showing that we all are connected to this collective that's giving us signs of this calling of really helping us and helping humanity. We just have trained ourselves to second guess and override it. And as you were sharing that, I remembered this story that I've actually never shared with anyone before. And last time you were on the podcast, I shared my story about being thrown down the hill for being a witch. So you always bring out my old stories, but
yes.
I remembered in college in Boston, I was on my way to watch the Boston Marathon, watch it every single year. And I lived on Boylston Street, which is the street of the Boston Marathon finish line. So I was on my way walking to the finish line, but something just kept telling me, it's like, I don't know, it's not time to go. Like I kept stalling. I kept being like, do we have food? Like, I don't know why. Like the marathon was like, it was probably early afternoon, I want to say by then. I kept stalling. finally, then for some reason, I'm like, let's actually take a train instead of walking there. Like my subconscious kept stalling us until I heard an explosion. And I just saw a bunch of people running my way. And none of us knew what was going on or what was happening. We all ran home. And I was in my apartment for the next 3 days while the search was happening for the Boston bombings. And I was supposed to be right there at the finish line watching it. And if my intuition didn't guide me, I could have been that person who lost their leg or their arm or whatever it was. And it was my own intuition telling me, like, don't go, don't go. And it reminded me, you said a backpack, because the bomb was in a backpack. And it's just so crazy to think. And again, and some people were affected by it. And I don't know what intuition, and I'm in no way victim blaming, and horrible things happen and my heart goes out to them. And there was a reason that my intuition was guiding me. And I'm so grateful that I listened. Otherwise, my plan was to be at the finish line the whole day when that bombing happened.
I got to recover from that. So I'm like, it makes me emotional just thinking about you being there. I'm like, I'm so glad you're okay. Yeah, I mean, that's how it works. That's the craziest part about it, is that it can seem so nonsensical. It can seem irrelevant and silly. And that's how I felt about like the smallness of the question at Layla's. Like, why would I ask her if someone's showering? You know, it's like, we don't know. We have no idea what the reason might be, but like, just try it, just see and listen and what might happen, what might shift, what you might be saved from, or what you might find. I remember one time I was up in Humboldt with my mom, and I was supposed to give this ceremony to her friend. And I just was called. I was like, Mom, I got invited to this party. I would never bail on Quinn, her friend. I would never bail on her for anything, but something just tells me I have to go. And I left Humboldt, went down to this party, and met someone who provided me at that time, like the biggest opportunity that I'd ever gotten in my life. And it was like, I had to bail on my mom's friend. It sucked. I did not want to do that, but I knew I had to be there. And so it can, you know, it can save us. It can save your life. It can save your arm, or it can like grant your wishes. It really just depends. And the point is just to be able to start listening to it, cultivate a relationship with it. We do a lot of that in witch school. Like, you know, are there any colors? Are there any signs? Are there any specific ways that your intuition wants to communicate with you so that you can really see like, oh, this is the direction I'm supposed to go in, or this is a hard no for me. This isn't just my fear or my ego. This is actually my guidance telling me that this is not something I should be doing. And it's like the most worthwhile practice, because then you're just led all the time, and it's so much easier to do everything in life.
I love that. So what are a couple of your favorite tips for harnessing more of that intuition?
Really just practice. When you notice some weird little thought, try it out, see what happens. You know, like mine lately especially has been, it's always on the back end. You know, I'm always like, God, I wish I'd listened to that, or I wish I'd said something, or I knew that was going to happen. And so just try practicing it. And either way, it's the same as with the relationships. Either way, you'll learn. Even when someone betrays you, yes, you can learn the disempowering thought of like, people can't be trusted, but you can also learn, oh, wow, I had that thought at the beginning that made me feel like, oh, I don't want to do this, or this doesn't feel right, or I don't feel safe. And you can listen to that and then save yourself from that drama. And I think that, you know, there's so many different things. Tuning into what part of your body, like, is there a part of your body that really makes you feel grounded, stable, that feels like a resource that you can listen to or place a hand on when you're looking for support? Is there a color that sort of like lights you up? Is there an angel number that when you see it, you know you're on the right path? Is there a sound? Some people are more auditory. I'm much more visual, but some people are more auditory. Is if you close your eyes and like listen, is the tone of the voice that's whispering to you, is it gravelly and scratchy and kind of makes you feel contracted? Or is it open and harmonious and soft and makes you feel expansive and excited? You know, there's so many different ways that we can do it. And it's, yeah, I think it's the most important relationship that we'll ever have. It's ultimately, it is our highest self communicating to us. Like, hey, little human down there, look, I have this full expanded perspective and I know something you don't know. Try this, you know?
Totally. And I feel like it also, yeah, it has so many different textures and changes. What is your best tip for understanding what's coming from your intuition and what's a story you're telling yourself that's not based in the truth? Because what if I have this fear that every woman's going to betray me, let's say. So I texted you and it took you like 2 days to text me back. So now my story is Mia hates me. Mia doesn't want to be my friend. Mia's going to leave me. So how do we know if that's coming from intuition of maybe you have been spending the past 2 days like, you know what, I'm kind of done with Sahara, or that's my own fear?
That's hard. I think that watching the stories, like going back to the root, what do you make it mean about yourself? So if you say that and you're just like witnessing, I had this happen to me with somebody recently and he like totally freaked out at me and was like really upset. And I was like, girl, one of my gay friends, I was like, girl, I've been off the grid. Like my phone's been off for 3 days. That's why I haven't texted you. And he's like, oh my God, I'm sorry. I went into this whole trip with myself. So looking at, okay, Mia hasn't texted me back in 2 days. One, what do I make that mean about myself? Do I make that mean that I'm not worthy, that I'm bad, that I'm wrong, that she doesn't want to be friends with me anymore, that there's some like I'm stupid, I'm fucked up, I did something bad? Okay, looking at that and instantly seeing like, wow, I'm making a really big meaning out of this. And okay, so you know, and this is something you want to work with like a coach or a therapist or someone who can facilitate or support you with. But if you're doing it on your own, it's like, okay, where was the first time I felt that? Where's the first time I made that story up? Oh, it happened when my dad left me, or it happened when in, you know, like you said, in 3rd grade, all these people started telling me I was a witch and like pushed me down a hill and broke my arm. Like that's when, oh, they didn't want to talk to me or they didn't want to hang out with me. And I got this belief that there's something wrong with me or that I'm bad. And I think that that's a really helpful practice, is to look at what the meaning is that you're making it. And then, like I said, tuning into the sensation or the color or the sound. Like, what does it feel like to hear that? What does it feel like to, you know, receive this guidance or this information? Does it feel bad? Does it feel icky? Does it feel like scary? Or does it feel just like edgy? And, you know, there are definitely things, especially for me, like with business, where I'm like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like, I'm not good at that. Or I'm just going to fail anyways. Or like, I shouldn't even try. You know, the VR thing has been big for me on that. It's like, I'm building a video game of transformational healing. Like, how the fuck am I supposed to do that? I do that when I'm engaged with people. I haven't played video games since like Mario Party with my brother when I was 10, you know? And I can feel that on the other side of the story, there's so much growth. There's so much expansion. There's new trust and faith in myself. There's empowerment. There's all this bliss and beauty. So that's usually your intuition. Even if you're feeling like, you can look at the story and think about how you would feel on the other side of it. If you're right and this person does betray you, it's like, okay, maybe you should have listened. But if this is the kind of friendship that you've always hoped for, then wow, great. That was your intuition guiding you or inviting you to expand. And in that, like you said, the most important thing I think you can do if you have, you know, fear or an issue coming up with somebody, is to open the communication, is to be really honest and say, hey, I was really hurt that you didn't text me back for 2 days. Or, hey, I was abandoned by my father and it brings up so much when I don't hear from someone that I'm dating. And the thing is that if a person can't accept you speaking your truth like that, then like, bye girl, bless your light and peace. I'll go find someone who can and who wants to communicate their truth to me in return. And that's always really helpful. So when it relates to other people, definitely checking in and seeing, because so often it'll go both ways. Sometimes people are like, actually, yeah, this is not really a friendship that I want to engage in. And you're like, okay, thank you. Or they're like I was with my friend, I was like, babe, I love you. I had nothing. I just literally wasn't at my phone. That's a story that you're making up. And either way, it generally leads, like one of my sisters and I just went through a big thing where she was like, I feel like I can't trust you. And I was like, okay, I get that. Let's work through it. And she didn't want to work through it, but I just kept pushing and showing up and saying, babe, I want to work through this. I want you to be able to trust me. And just by me showing up and maintaining commitment to continuing the conversation and not just being like, okay, she doesn't trust me, peace, whatever, I'm like, I don't care. That is what rebuilt the trust for her. She was like, I've never seen someone show up in a conflict the way that you're doing right now. This is so healing for me. It's like, great. So it's so many different things in so many different ways. And it just depends on what you want on the other side of it. Do you want to feel more connected, or do you want to feel more isolated? Do you want to feel more empowered, or do you want to feel, less fulfilled?
I love that so much. And yeah, I would say like the voice of your intuition is always expansive and the voice of your fear is always contractive. So if
Yeah.
you're feeling like, oh my God, Mia probably hates me because I don't know, she thinks I'm dumb and that's why she's not responding to my text. Like that's a contractive thought. That doesn't feel inspiring. That doesn't feel empowering. That's not the voice of your intuition. That's not, however, maybe your intuition is saying, there's so many people who live nearby me. And maybe I'm putting all of my eggs into this one relationship that I'm not looking at all of the people around me that I haven't even been putting any energy or effort or attention into. That can be the voice of your intuition. And I think also sometimes when you take that first action, when you're guided by your intuition, you start to notice the synchronicities of, let's say you're holding on to this friendship because they've been your best friend for like 20 years and you don't know life without them, but you're such different people at this point, then maybe you start to open up and meet new people. And then before you know it, you're meeting all of these people. And it's like that synchronicity, that path of least resistance is in action because your intuition is like, yes, bitch, we've been waiting for you to do this. Like we have all of these amazing people. And I think one of the witch wounds is like a feeling of, well, no one else is going to get me. I can't find people. And I know we even sometimes say this ourselves. We're like, no one understands us, but then it's hard because it feels like there's only like X number of people in the coven and I'm not going to be able to connect with anyone else. So it's better for me to be alone or in relationships that aren't serving me because I'm not going to be able to find new friends. So if someone is feeling like it's really hard for me to make aligned friends, what would you suggest for them?
I would say that the most important thing it's like the betrayal is to be aligned with yourself. How are you hiding? How are you not shining? How are you shying away from going to the things that you're interested in? That was how I found basically every friend I've ever had. I think it was Fern that invited me that night that you and I first met. It was like, Fern invited me over and was like, hey, like, I'm just having some witches over, or maybe, she probably didn't even say that. She was like goddesses or whatever it was. And I only knew Fern. I didn't know Cassandra. I didn't know you. Who else was there? Allison was there. It was like, I didn't know any of you guys. And someone else, Desiree.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And, and I just knew I was supposed to be there. So for me, one of the best things is like saying yes, is going to things. It's the same as the destiny. I'm like, oh, let me go do something weird, right? Let me go do something that's a little out of my comfort zone. And that's where I've found all of my best friends, is by saying yes to some weird thing that I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I mean, there's boundaries on that, right? Like maybe you don't want to go to, I don't know. I'm not going to say like, maybe you want to go to a dungeon, like who knows? Like, do you be into whatever you're into, right? For me, it was like sound baths and breath work and all those things. Not that I'm opposed to dungeons. Anyways, another topic. So, but that's one of the big ones. Actually practicing speaking your truth and being who you want to be, so that then that the kinds of people that you're attracting are attracted to you as you are. That's such a big one. And then also really just putting yourself out there. I just worked through this with one of my clients and it was so beautiful. She was like, I don't have any friends that like know what I'm interested in. And she shared that with one of her friends. She expressed like, I'm feeling like I can't be myself. I really want to get into the spiritual stuff. And like 2 weeks later, it was her birthday. And her friend that was like not as spiritual gave her this beautiful heart chakra necklace and, like made a transition and shifted and wanted to be friends with her. And then like 2 days later, this random girl in one of her university classes just comes up to her and is like, are you into tarot cards? And she's like, oh my God, it's happening. So I think that just being yourself, giving yourself permission to be yourself is the biggest thing. And then keep putting yourself out there. Let the people that aren't aligned fall away. People worry about being alone, but the origin of the word alone is being all one. Because when we are alone, we can remember that we're one with everything. We are connected to everything. Go connect to the earth, make friends with a tree, sit and communicate with a plant and feel how connected you actually are to this living sentient being. And I guarantee you, again, just like everything else, that ripple will affect your entire reality. And keep having trust, trust in yourself, trust in your voice, trust in your unique essence and medicine. And the more you trust in that, the more you will attract people who trust in their own and who are then excited to be friends with you.
So true. And I think that so many of us feel like we have to be this like lukewarm, vanilla, average person so people can like us. The thing is like, no one actually likes that. No one's like, yeah, I really like a real basic friend. But here we are thinking, oh, if I'm too loud, too mystical, too spiritual, too out there, I'm going to be abandoned. I'm going to be put into that box. Men aren't going to like me. Women aren't going to like me. And I'm going to be the woman with a bunch of cats who died alone in the middle of the cottage. And like, we were even told stories about this from the time we were a kid of like, see what happens to the witch alone in the forest. She's so ugly and no one likes her. And like, we're like, shit, I don't want to be that person. I want to be the princess with no personality because like she has the palace and she has the man and she has the people around her. But the thing is, it's like, we're attracted. Like when I think about the biggest like artists of all time, like Prince or Michael Jackson or even Marilyn Monroe, et cetera, they were loved and hated. Totally. It was both. They were polarizing, because when light is so bright, it is naturally going to attract the people who are like, I can't stand that. And it's like, no matter what you do, there's always going to be people who like the opposite. Like in making a choice, you're also making a choice to not be a thing. Like we're saying, we are witches and we are spiritual. So we're saying we are not, mainstream. We are not like this, whatever this thing is. So there's always a choice. And I think that so many of us, we want both. We're like, I want to be unique and every single person like me. And like, that's just not how it works. So what advice do you have for our inner people pleaser, that desire in us for everyone to like us? And how can we move past that and realize we are still safe even when people don't like us?
Charles Eisenstein said to me in Egypt last year that people say you have to learn to love yourself first in order for someone else to love you. But that's an illusion. One of the greatest healing salves to loving yourself is being loved by another. And I thought that was really powerful because you have to put it into practice. You have to try being yourself and let yourself be loved. I don't mind people not liking me because of the people who love me, because I would rather have quality people who love me exactly as I am, who know my shadows and my darkness, but who are there for me and celebrate me and support me the way that you do, the way that all of our sister witches do, than like 1,000 friends who are kind of like, yeah, Mia's like, she's cool. She's all right. Whatever. Like, I don't know, like you said, the basic friendship. I don't want that. I'm here for deep, soulful connection. And I know from seeing all the, hundreds of thousands of people that I've seen in my life, I know that there's someone for everyone. And that doesn't just apply to soulmates. There are people, we've got all this fam that are like super into the ayahuasca and deep in the medicine. We've got all this fam that are like, into dance and twerking and into the things. We've got fam that are into rituals. We all kind of mix and blend when something brings us all together. There's someone for everyone. There are people who want to just be quiet with their friends and have a cup of tea and sit somewhere and like make quilts or, like whatever it is, there is someone for everyone. And so I think that the people pleaser in you, I hate to like say the same thing over and over again, but if it's true, it's like, what would it be like to focus that people pleasing energy on yourself? What would it be like to think about, okay, even if everyone hated me, how am I going to feel about myself if I do this? Am I going to hate myself or am I going to love myself? And if it takes me like going skydiving or like making this quilt or learn, going to herbalism school or whatever it is. And it's going to make me love myself. It's going to make me feel great about myself. That's going to be the thing that when you make that choice, and then the other person who loves quilting or loves skydiving or is in your herbalism school is going to come, and then they will love you and they will support you and they will be your friend. And that love, that confirmation is, like he said, is just the greatest healing salve. And that is what then, it's like, okay, yes, we made the choice of how am I going to please myself? This is what makes me love myself. But then it led to someone loving me. And then that makes me love myself more. And then it's this beautiful cycle of love that just gets generated and cultivated. And I think that's what we're all yearning for. And that's not present because of how many of us don't know how to be ourselves.
I love that so much. And I feel like because we're all at home and separated, we feel like, well, where do I find the other quilting people? Where do I find the other people into dungeons? Like, where are they? And I think, but that's also the beauty is online. There are so many online communities, Rose Gold Goddesses, which you'll be teaching a ritual in December. It's like everyone in Rose Gold Goddesses is resonating with divine feminine energy, probably has like a playful, joyful side to her, resonates with this podcast. So you all know that you have this big thing in common. People who join witch school, they all are really deeply wanting to embody the witch. People who join a shaman course, you all know they want to dive into quilt school, whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I think that so many of us, we just haven't tapped into what is right in front of us. Like there are so many opportunities to connect with people all around the world. And we also have the story of like, well, I need them to live like immediately close to me and like only in person. But like, look, we live on opposite sides of the country right now and have for the past year, but we make an effort. We're like, hey, let's FaceTime. Let's plan a time that we can see each other again. Like, let's keep each other updated in our lives. And I think that, I don't know how long. I'm hoping for a time we all live in a community, and we can all be in person. But I think what we aren't realizing is like, we're all here to raise the vibration of the planet. So does that mean you can only interact with people around you? No, like there are so many people across the planet that you get to share codes with.
Yeah.
And it's so fun to be able to experience people who don't know anyone and have none of that context. And you can actually be the newest version of yourself with them without them like, you used to be like this in high school or whatever the story was. And you get to experience them in this new way. And the other thing is there are a lot of like loose friendships that we may have that we're not cultivating. Like I remember even when we met at Ferns, it wasn't until I want to say like 2 years later that we dropped in. It's like, I would see you somewhere, like, we're like, yeah, let's chat, but like, it wouldn't happen. And somewhere else. And I think like one day we were just like, okay, we need to hang out. Like this needs to happen. But it was just, maybe not divine timing, but also like neither of us fully making that initiative. Yeah. And I think that so many of us, we probably have like 10 or more people that, maybe you follow on social media, you're interested in, but we're assuming that other person is busy. So we're like, I don't want to be a burden and message them or get rejected by them. So I'm just going to not say anything. And that person's feeling the exact same way. Why isn't anyone reaching out to me? So if we just like reach out to people, drop the story that we're a burden and like no one wants to hang out with us, we are all going to have so many more meaningful relationships.
Yeah. And I think that's a really great segue into just mentioning for Samhain, for this beautiful witches holiday that we have coming up, is this is the in-between time between summer and winter, like the solstices, and between technically it's between the autumn equinox and the winter solstice. So it's like the in-between time of the in-between time. And in-between times in earth-based traditions are said to be the most magical, the most mystical, because it's not quite day and it's not quite night. It's not quite autumn, but it's not quite winter. It's this middle ground. It's like that Buddhist middle way path. And so in Mexico, you'll see Dia de los Muertos and the Day of the Dead and all of these different traditions really utilizing that in-between time to ask for guidance, to ask for support, to connect to the ancestors. And so the new moon in Scorpio actually comes up on November 4th. So just a few days after Halloween, when we're definitely still in that, or Samhain, when we're in that portal of the in-between times. And that's such a great moment to set intentions, ask your ancestors, know about the witch wound and how it's showing up for you based on this conversation that you and I have had. What can you dive into or look at? What kind of journal prompts or questions have you answered that we've discussed even just in this last hour? And how can you look at what are the seeds that you want to plant in terms of creating transformation? Scorpio is the sign of the alchemist, of the great transformer, the death and rebirth. It's like, what are the ways that you want to let die? Maybe it's that fear of being betrayed and you want to trust in yourself and in people. And you're planting the seeds of listening to your intuition or doing a ritual once a month for yourself or whatever the case may be. I think that this is, it's just interesting that this Samhain, this holiday that's celebrated all over the world, is coming up because everything that we're talking about is transformational. It's like, how can you transform your life, your relationship to your own wisdom, to your own magic, in order to feel like you can trust it, to feel confident in it, to feel like even if somebody tries to cancel you, you know how important it is for you to be exactly as you are. You know that there's no person that's more important to please than yourself, than your highest self, right? The one giving you that guidance. So yeah, just a little ritual inspo for all of you as this comes up, because I think that would be really powerful.
Yes, and we've done ritual together for the past 2 years now for Samhain. My favorite was when we did 2 years ago in person, where we each brought a picture of an ancestor or an artifact or something connected to our ancestors, such as a photo of a grandmother or something of your lineage, etc. And we each shared that person's story, and had all these beautiful like fall harvest vegetables to really celebrate that time of moving into the darkness. And really what was beautiful about it was to let our grandmother's stories be heard again, because so many of them, they died in the shadows. No one got to hear their voices. No one got to hear what was present for them. And so many of us are choosing to do the clearing work for our entire lineages right now. And it's just such a beautiful, beautiful portal. And what's incredible about it is Samhain and Dia de los Muertos in Mexico are one day apart.
Yeah.
These cultures had no communication with each other and chose one day apart as the day that the veils between our realm and the ancestral realm are the thinnest, to give respect to the ancestors. So like there's something beyond our three-dimensional senses that these two different cultures chose the exact same portal of time. So if someone is wanting to do, and we're going to be this year in Rose Gold Goddesses doing a Samhain ritual of sharing our ancestors' womb stories, of speaking what happened, whether it was rape, assault, child marriage, like really heavy things, or maybe your grandma was like the first woman to work in your family, and like, whatever it was, but letting her story be heard and witnessing other women's stories, to know that like we all come from long lines of women. We're not these like vacuums in a box. It didn't all show up today. Like we are the result of us. Just for us to be here, there had to be, I believe it was like 7,000 something, like great grandparents just for us to be here. We're connected to all of them. So do you have any tips for doing a solo or group Samhain ritual?
Yeah, I think that it really just depends on what you know about your ancestors, what you desire. I just added, we're starting Witchy Rich on November 11th, which is the money work. And we're starting with working with deities, and like, what is a deity or a deva or just a larger energetic frequency that you can tune in with. And the thing is that if you don't have relationships with your ancestors, specifically, if you don't have, like, you don't know about who your grandmother was, or these 7,000 people, right? They all go all the way back, and you just don't know that much. You can tune in with any energetic frequency in the universe, whether it's a god or a goddess or an angel, or just like a conscious vibration, like worthiness or love or harmony. And you can utilize this in between time. The reason why it's a day apart is because it's in between the solstices. and in between the equinoxes. So the solstices and the equinoxes were celebrated by every major ancient civilization. Those were the high holy days. It didn't matter what your religious belief was, like the pyramids in Central America, the pyramids in Egypt, the Stonehenge, all of the standing stones in the UK and in Europe. All of them had something that was magical. That the temples in Cambodia, everything had something magical that would happen on the solstices, because those were the cosmological events that we could all be aware of. And so everybody knew, like, okay, this is the time moving in from autumn to winter. This is the time when we're about to move into that season of death. So everybody's present. So you can do anything you want on your own. You can, if you want, like you said, maybe your grandmother was the first one to work in your family and you want to actually honor your ancestors. Maybe you're feeling really empowered right now, really great about your business. And so you don't necessarily want to like let something die. You want new things to be birthed and to be born. You can create a ritual that's all about the gratitude for the harvest that you've experienced throughout this year. Like, what have you learned? How have you grown? How have you expanded? You can create a beautiful altar that represents, every single thing on it, whether it's flowers or like we had the autumn fruits and gourds and colors. You can create something that's all about that bountiful abundance as a blessing to move into the dark time and say, I'm giving so much thanks for everything that has occurred. I feel safe to move into this dark time. Or you can say, hey, this particular god or goddess or great grandmother or my matrilineal line that I don't know anything about, I am your dreams come to reality. I am here now in this time, and I believe I have a destiny and I haven't found it yet. And I'm feeling stuck and tired and afraid, and I am asking for help. And you can dance, you can shake, you can move, you can twerk, you can cry, you can breathe, you can go out and connect with the earth. You can write a letter, from that. One of the practices that I always recommend is a channeled writing. I call upon X. It can be my ancestors. I call upon the goddess. I call upon the spirits of the earth, the dragons, whatever it is. I call upon you to write to me, through me, anything I'm meant to receive in this moment. And I promise you, you will receive something so beautiful if you do that practice intentionally. And so there's so many different things that you can do, but definitely honoring the stories, if you know them, where you came from. And if you don't know the stories, just honoring yourself, that you are here, that you've made it, that you've chosen to be alive in a really pivotal time on the planet. And it's important for all of us to, it's like that Mulan song, they're like, she'll bring honor to us, she'll bring honor to us all, how do you want to bring honor to your family? And like Mulan's destiny was not to do it by getting match made. It was to be this amazing female warrior who then saved the life of the emperor. It's like, that's the kind of honor that you have the opportunity to bring if you so choose. And you can ask for guidance, especially during this time.
So beautiful. Can you repeat that journal prompt again to speak
Yes,
through
it's
me?
I call upon whatever it is you want to call upon to write to me, through me, anything I'm meant to receive in this moment, or any messages meant for me in this moment.
So
that's
good.
been, I did that every day for a year, saying I call upon my highest self. And it was so powerful. And it's 2:22 here for me right now. So, that's the goddess being like, yes, tell them this is good. Call upon me. I'm here. I'll answer.
It's amazing. Like sometimes when we take the time to journal, we're like, I wouldn't have thought of that, realized that, channeled that if I didn't take the space that we're like, why isn't my intuition working? It's like, have you given it any time?
Yeah.
It's like a relationship. It's like, why isn't it thriving? Have you given it any time? Like, have you worked on it? Have you created a container? So even just that practice, like lighting a candle and just journaling. And I believe there's so much power too in utilizing the throat chakra and being seen by another woman and sharing that, and it's like, I feel like in the past 2 years and in spirituality in general, it's like very solo and that masculine, and that's great. and to be in circle with other women and like to feel their energy and to feel like their tears and what shows up for them. There's just such a level of humanness, and we instantly drop in when we're in that, like you said, the water like energy in our society, especially right now with politics, et cetera. It's so fiery and it's so, and I feel what we're really missing is that deep connection. And, even right now we're on Zoom, but I can still feel you through it because I'm seeing you. So the invitation is to connect with other sisters and let yourselves be seen and heard and celebrated. And another little note on the Samhain, Dia de los Muertos connection is I actually heard it was related to the Lemurian portals, because there were time portals that were connecting Europe to Latin South America. And that's why so many of the pyramids and codes, and this also actually traces to Angkor Wat and these different places. Like there's so much like math and sacred geometry of how they're connected, but it did come from those Lemurian time travel portals.
It's so interesting you say that, because one of the things that I just went to the Big Island for the weekend a few weeks ago and was having just so many synchronicities and moments. And I was told by a Hawaiian elder on Kauai years ago that there are these teleportation stones that the priestesses of Hawaii would sit in. They're like big, like pulled out stones, and they would teleport to Egypt. And that the teleportation to Egypt is actually how the Hawaiian, or not like the original Hawaiian pre-Tahitian, Polynesian, we call them, none of those words are their words for themselves, but that indigenous island people, that's how they learned their wayfinding, was by teleporting to Egypt. And I was like, that is cool. I'm into that story, and so that makes so much sense, especially with all of the, just different Lemurian, all the pyramids, all the, Dakota just went to the Azores and she was like, it literally feels like Hawaii and Ireland had a baby. And that's one of the, there's many places that are thought to be Atlantis, but that's one of the places. And it's also volcanic and super ancient. And she said that there were springs everywhere, to the point where like there were springs where you could get bubbly water out of, like, the earth is literally carbonating the water. And she's like, oh, you can get still water, you can get halfway bubbly, you can get full bubble. I was like, that is so cool. So just places like that have so much history and magic and that bountiful earth energy. So powerful, so beautiful.
So amazing. Yeah, it's just incredible when you see these, these different cultures and the ways that they received information. And, you were sharing about your trip to Egypt and how still to this day, they don't even know how these pyramids were created. Like a human could not have created those pyramids for a number of reasons, the weight, the ways that they were connected. Like no one can still to this day, even a top scientist. And it was because, and you were sharing how they would literally like use their mind to move and sculpt these pyramids. And I mean, this is also in itself like a whole entire podcast / dissertation of that. But why I'm bringing this up is the more you open yourself up to your intuition, to magic, the more these things open up for you. The average person wouldn't even, if we said this, they're going to laugh. You guys are crazy. Time travel portals, like, you've been watching Back to the Future too much. Like they wouldn't even receive it. But for us, it's like, this is a normal conversation. We talk about this stuff all the time and even beyond. And that's what happens. The more that you trust your own magic, the more magic shows up in your life.
Totally. And the Egyptian, when I was there last year and I asked these stones that like each stone is like 150,000 tons. So they're like 300,000 pounds or something. No, that doesn't make sense. But you know what I mean? It was like hundreds of thousands of pounds, one stone, like single stone. And I sat up against them and I just dropped into meditation. We'd just done a beautiful ritual that was actually about ancestral lineages. And I asked them, how did you get here? And they said they learned to sing our songs. They learned to sing our songs. And when they sang to us, we volunteered and we chose to come and we taught them the ways to, and it's kind of like, I'm like, I could look in my journal and see exactly what they said, because I did that exact thing. I call upon these stones, please write to me, through me, whatever I'm meant to receive. But it was about utilizing vibration. Right? It's about understanding what is the vibration of this stone being able to then wield your mind, your tone, your sound, trust in yourself, your own personal magic to be able to, maybe they didn't like use their own voices to cut the stone. The stones didn't say anything about that, but they said that the stones and this song were able to work together, not only to separate the stones from the mountain, but then to move them, because that's one of the biggest mysteries, is like, they didn't have boats, they didn't have forklifts. How did they move these massive hundreds of thousands of pounds of stone to the Great Pyramids in Giza? And that was what the stones told me, which again, like, I'm like, most people will be like, yeah, fucking crazy. And we're like, yeah, the stones told me, you know? But they told me that it was all a matter of vibration, and that then they were able to change their density so that they shifted and were able to be much lighter. And that's how they were able to be transported.
I love that. And it's just such a great testament to the power of sound, the power of the elements, and the power of our minds and our consciousness, and like what we can create. If we can create pyramids with millions upon millions of pounds of stone that have surpassed the test of time, unlike anything else, it's like, you can create your own reality. That's like easy compared to this. They're like, what should we channel for like the collective like history of Earth, you know? So it's just a great reminder to us to connect to something bigger. And I think that we get so caught up in our little lives and our big problems, and everything feels so intense. And it's like, you are a magician, you are a witch, you are an alchemist, you create your own reality. And if something is not serving you, abracadabra.
That's right.
It is out.
Yeah, that's right, girl. Yeah, it's funny. I mean, I know that's what you guys are all doing in RGG, and that's what my whole course is about. Witchy Rich is like, how can you heal? It's not about just like, oh, let me get all this money. It's how can you heal the things that are blocking your receivership of abundance? How can you heal the things that are in the way of creating connection with sisters, as opposed to comparison that then like drags you down and keeps you in scarcity? It's really, we all have this power, and working with the elements, right? The earth is our body, the water is our blood, the air is our breath, the fire is the power and the electricity that's running through us all the time, that's allowing me to have my neurons firing and see you and be able to receive the light. And then that spirit, that ether, is what makes us unique. It's what sparks that ember inside of us that then allows us to be alive. We are so connected to this earth and to the world around us. And that's why we can mold it and shift it and change the vibration of it, shift the density, raise the frequency of it, because it's all just reflections of us.
This is making me want to sing Earth, my body,
water, my blood, air, my breath, and fire, my spirit. Yeah.
So much fun. So can you share a little bit with listeners more about Witchy Rich? And we have a really special discount code with them, code Sahara, which you can find in the show notes.
Yeah, so you guys can use code Sahara for a discount on Witchy Rich, and it's all about manifesting money and slaying scarcity magically. So how can I utilize magic? How can I heal myself, my own wounds, my own blockages, my own challenges, or things that come through my ancestral line? You know, some of the things for me was like the upper limit. My dad was total failure, became a total success, hit an upper limit, and like went back into failure. And so those are the kinds of patterns that we can see from our family lines that we want to eradicate, that we want to move through. So it has live coaching sessions and rituals, and we're going to be really working together to move through any and all blocks to manifesting money. And we've had people that made $100,000 literally out of nowhere during the program, manifested amazing. And it's all kinds of abundance. It doesn't have to just be financial abundance. We've had people that, you know, really wanted to start their business or find their purpose. And all of those things are possible when we remove the blocks and do this work like we've been talking about the whole time, to shift our belief systems. And so we are starting on November 11th on Thursday, and we'll have 6 weekly coaching call sessions, and you get all of the video content and rituals and workbooks and all of the other magical things. And like you said, a beautiful community of people who want to heal themselves and move into their next level of abundance using magic as well.
So good. So if people are interested, head over to the show notes, use the code Sahara for your discount. I know so many of my community members have done your courses before and loved them so much. So I'm really excited to see all the abundance you guys manifest and all the incredible causes and Etsy shops and coaches that you support with that abundance, because it really does create this ripple effect of, again, creating that reality that we want to be a part of.
Yeah,
we're like, let's spend it all on Etsy.
It's so funny you say that, because that's like one of the things that I talk about is supporting small businesses and supporting people that are really making things with their hands. Like I know you get all your beautiful art and all of those things behind you from people that make them on Etsy. And it's so great that's such a good way to generate more abundance, is by providing it to people who it actually really needs something for, other than like Jeff Bezos. I think he's pretty much set.
Yeah, I think he's good. So I love that so much. So head over to the show notes for that. And thank you so much, Mia, for sharing your heart, your wisdom, your mind, your everything, your allness. You always show up fully. And I'm so grateful for you on the podcast and for you in my life.
Yeah, me too, Queen. I love you so much. Thank you for having me again. Thanks for sharing all the witchcraft with all the people.
Of course, witches got to share.
Yeah, we're just crafting our wisdom here, right? It's so beautiful. And I just honor you so deeply for always showing up as your highest self and being such an amazing sister and being so willing to show who you are to people, even in the midst of a world that can be scary. And you're just so brave. And I honor you so deeply. And I love you so much.